all people giving coronavirus vaccines should insert the needle into the deltoid muscle, aspirate first to make sure there is no inadvertent intravascular administration, and then, providing no blood comes into the syringe, squirt it in.
Yeah, I'm sick of everyone armchair saying that they know more than the doctors.
And I think it will lift children out of poverty. A woman with, let's say, 5 children on the 5, 3 children on the 5 will get $10,200. So this is a real shot in the arm of oxygen.
You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Yeah. I want us to miss this moment, and I don't want us to miss this message. If you are going to focus on the looting, which, by the way, white people are looting too, we need to see those images. I'm sick of just seeing black people walking around looting. White people are looting too, but that's not the point. The bigger story is the peaceful protest that is happening.
Going on, it's disgusting, and it has to end. And those who are enabling the disinformation have to stop. Now, these individuals are still at large. They are out there on these platforms at this hour of this day, literally depriving people of their lives by lying to them. It is unacceptable, and we have to stop it. So today, New York City is calling on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to de-platform the disinformation. Doesn't take away their bully pulpit that is killing people. Stop them now. Kick them off your sites right now, completely, immediately. Also, the Department of Health in New York City is officially sending a letter to Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey. The doctors at the Department of Health are saying, stop the spread of the lies, stop the spread of COVID. If you don't stop the lies, then you are complicit in the spread of COVID. It has to end. You have no right to put people's lives in danger. It's just like Assemblyman Dick Gottfried said. We all understand the liberties and freedoms of this country, but we value life, and if someone is standing in the way of human life, if someone is causing people to die, it has to be stopped, and these platforms can do so much about it. We demand they do so immediately.
A warning, this video is graphic and may be disturbing to some viewers.
In 2002, beginning in 2002, there were 3 SARS epidemics. And these are, SARS is a coronavirus. And the first of those was a natural occurring coronavirus that jumped from bats in China to human beings. The second 2 were lab-created coronaviruses that escaped from the lab and caused these epidemics. And that's non-controversial, and everybody, agrees with that. But there was deep concern about the transmissibility and the virulence of coronavirus and its capacity to jump from animals to human beings. So all of the major nations, Western nations, and China got together between 2006 and 2012 to create coronavirus vaccines. They created about 30 vaccines, and they chose the 4 most promising ones. This was a consortium of the best scientists, virologists, and immunologists in the world. They gave those 4 vaccines to ferrets, and ferrets are the closest analogy when it comes to upper respiratory infections to human beings. So they're heavily utilized to study coronavirus. Ferrets had an excellent immune response to the vaccines, meaning they developed antibodies. And that's the metric that FDA uses when it licenses a vaccine. It just looks and says, is it producing antibodies? Vaccines are never tested in the field, Patrick. Nobody ever gives 5,000 people a vaccine and 5,000 people no vaccine and then sends them out and sees what happens. That's not how they get licensed. They get licensed by showing that they can produce antibodies. And the presumption is that that antibody will defend you against future attacks by that virus. And so the ferrets developed a really good antibody response, and they thought they had 4 winners here. But then something really frightening happened. When those ferrets were exposed to the wild virus, they had developed horrible inflammation throughout all the organs on their bodies, and they died, particularly in their lungs, and they died. And then those scientists remembered that the same thing had happened when they had tried an RSV vaccine in the 1960s on children. And RSV was very similar to coronavirus, upper respiratory infection, and they had given it to they skipped animal studies. They gave it to 35 kids, and it was provoked excellent immune response. But then when those kids were exposed to the wild virus, they began horribly sick, and 2 of them died. And they immediately discontinued that study, and it was a scandal. Everybody remembered it. And in 2012, when they were testing all of these vaccines, they said to themselves on ferrets, they said, this is what happened to those children. We tried it out, and they developed an antibody response, but then they had what we call paradoxical immune enhancement. That when they were exposed to the real virus, instead of protecting against it, it actually enhanced it, and it made it much more deadly. And then they connected it in 2014 to the dengue vaccine, which was one of Tony Fauci's vaccines, which had a lot of those same red flags during the clinical trials, but they gave it to the Filipinos anyway. The Philippines gave it to hundreds of thousands of kids. The kids were great immune response, and then when they were exposed to the wild virus, they died. 600 of them died. And the Philippine government today is prosecuting criminally, putting people in jail for that, because they knew it. They knew something bad was going to happen from the clinical trials. And so this is something that is a unique peculiarity of coronavirus. And it's puzzling that Tony Fauci, on his own vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, which his agency owns 50% of that vaccine, and they went right to human testing without testing it on animals. And that just seems almost criminally irresponsible. And he's allowing the same thing. Oh, I would ask him, knowing that history, and by the way, it's not just me saying this. All the people who have criticized me for my stance on vaccines for many years, the leaders like Peter Hotez, Paul Offit, and Ian Lipkin are all saying the same thing that I'm saying to you right now. You have to be really, really careful with the coronavirus vaccine. Reason is that vaccines develop a immune response, but they develop different kinds. There are 2 different kinds of antibodies, and this is what they found out from this process. There's neutralizing antibodies, which you want your body to produce, and that guards you against the disease. Those are good antibodies. But they also produce a specific species of antibodies called blinding antibodies, and those are the ones that provoke an enhanced immune response once you're exposed to the vaccine. And you have to figure out, which one of those you're actually producing. And it's unclear that the way you do that is by testing it on animals. And they're not doing that in this case. The other thing that they're not doing is they're not using placebo testing, which means nobody will ever know what the risk profile is for those products. If you don't test against placebo, you don't know whether the people who became ill in that cohort that received the vaccine became ill because of the vaccine or it's just coincidental. There's no way to know, and so they don't even record it. And it immediately creates opportunities for bias, for corruption, and for cheating if you do not use placebo. And that's why the World Health Organization, CDC, FDA, NIH, everybody says, if you don't use a placebo, it's not science, it's marketing. And that's what they're doing. They're doing all of these tests without using placebo. And I would say to Anthony Fauci, why aren't you using a placebo group? Are you scared about what is going to be shown about safety if you actually use a true placebo group? It's completely irresponsible.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with your great day.
That's how they got busted. Well, that will never happen with vaccines because there are no lawsuits. There is no liability. They can do anything they want to you, and there are no consequences. The same companies that are selling you that measles drug are now selling, and the hepatitis B and the DTaP and the HIV vaccines. And that vaccine is giving you seizures or epilepsy or autism or food allergies or asthma. That same company is now selling your child who is sick for life the albuterol inhalers, the COVID inhalers, the Adderall, the Ritalin, the Concerta, the anti-seizure medication, the diabetes drugs, the rheumatoid arthritis drugs. These companies are making $50 billion a year selling vaccines, mandatory vaccines. And then they're making $500 billion a year selling the treatments for the chronic diseases that are being caused by those vaccines. So there is not only no incentive for them to make it safe, there's actually an incentive for them to make those vaccines as dangerous as possible. They have monopoly control. There's no competition. Everybody's told, you take this Merck's hepatitis B shot. You take Merck's MMR. There is no other MMR to take.
I'm sick of just seeing black people walking around looting. White people are looting too, but that's not the point. The bigger story is the peaceful protest that is happening.
Pretty much ends the violence at that moment. But look at just how disgusting this is to watch. The looting has got.
If two black people killed a police officer, they would instantly become heroes.
The looting has got.
News division, these people are supposed to be reporters doing the exact same thing that they did during the Iraq War, which is that, what reporters are not supposed to take the word of government officials. My father told me when I was a kid, people in power lie. The job of a reporter is constant skepticism, constant scrutiny, and to ask the difficult questions, and that simply is not happening.
Hiding them. Then all of a sudden you go to your friend's house.
Do you want to know the truth? My grandma's missing a toe on each foot.
Even if they cause one injury, how can you force a human being to take it against their will?
Yeah, I'm sick of everyone armchair saying that they know more than the doctors.
The question is whether or not we should be in a position where you are. Why can't the experts say we know that this virus is in fact it's going to be. Or excuse me, we know why all the drugs approved are not temporarily approved, but permanently approved. Yeah. That's underway too. I expect that to occur quickly.
Well, that means you mean for the FDA?
For the FDA.
Yeah. So
the Federal Drug Administration. The Federal Drug Administration.
Charter, all of those say in them, you cannot give a medication to somebody against their will, even if the life of the nation is at stake. That's a quote.
Now, when President Harris and I took, when I took office, when we took office, there was a lot that had to be done in the first 100 days of our office.
I think that everybody should go and get the shot. It's a little shot. It takes 2 seconds. It doesn't hurt.
You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. All right, so I have a special guest with me today. And we just want to thank you for using your platform and your voice for elevating the important issue of young people getting vaccinated. She's here today to meet with the president and Dr. Fauci later this afternoon, but she agreed to come say a quick hello to all of you first. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Olivia.
It's not me saying this. If you look, there's 420 diseases that are now epidemic since 1989. And by the way, Congress told EPA, tell us what year the autism epidemic began. And the EPA scientists came back and said, we can draw a red line. It happened in 89. That's when everything changed. Well, that's the year the vaccine schedule changed. But those diseases that are now epidemic, those 420 diseases, they appear on two lists. One is a list of diseases that have become epidemic since 1989, and two, They are on the manufacturer's inserts listed as side effects from vaccination. And the reason for that is because if the one way that you can sue a vaccine company under VICA is if they know of an injury that's caused by vaccines, a side effect, and they fail to list it on their manufacturer's inserts. So that's the one place they're honest. And if you look at the DTaP vaccine, autism is listed as an insert on their insert. So they'll deny it everywhere else. They admit it on their inserts, and that's where you can go to get the truth. Let me say one other thing. You know, my party, the Democratic Party, is the worst on this issue. And it's very odd to me that they're mandating these vaccines that are untested. How can you mandate any medication for a human being? How can you tell somebody, we are going to force you to take a medication that you don't want to take? And, you know, we signed a treaty, the Nuremberg Charter, after World War II, because the Nazis were doing that. They were testing vaccines on people and all these other medical treatments. And we said that is a war crime. We don't do that to people. And we signed the Syracuse Protocols, the UN Charter of Human Rights, Helsinki Accords, the Nuremberg Charter, all of those say in them, you cannot give a medication to somebody against their will, even if the life of the nation is at stake. That's a quote. And yet, we're mandating these drugs that not only are we forcing people to take them when we know they cause injury, and the vaccine court has paid out $4 billion, and they're severely limited, those judgments. And even HHS admits at the vaccine court that fewer than 1% of injuries ever gets reported or awarded. So, you know, make that 400 billion. We know they cause a lot of injuries. Even if they cause one injury, how can you force a human being to take it against their will? All of those other rights can only be subverted if they begin imposing censorship.
You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Yeah, I'm sick of everyone armchair saying that they know more than the doctors.
By being able to silence people who want to speak. So the coup d'etat that we are all fighting today is a coup d'etat that starts with a conspiracy between the government agencies and the big technology companies.
The challenges facing the United States in human rights are deep-seated. They did not just emerge over the past 4 years, such as Black Lives Matter.
Boycotting the awards, blasting them for being biased. Here's ABC's Andrew Fajid.
Relationships with people who don't look like us and who are different than us.
And I feel your pain as a non-white person.
A firefighter suffered a concussion and broken teeth. Police are still looking for the other 5 kids.
And I think that's really
discovery and now a mystery. How did a 1-month-old girl die in the Bronx?
Really the first way around this is seeing each other's humanity, and you don't.
Sources telling Eyewitness News the baby was found with 2 fractures to her skull.
Then you won't be able to discriminate against people or dehumanize people if you can really see and feel.
Young teenagers who lure somebody into a hallway and then shoot them in the head and rob them. They're 14 years old.
But he does not want them to serve jail time.
The job of a reporter is constant skepticism, constant scrutiny, and to ask the difficult questions, and that simply is not happening.
Then all of a sudden you go to your friend's house.
Do you want to know the truth? My grandma's missing a toe on each foot. She's missing a toe.
Barbara?
Is missing a toe on each foot.
Has she ever divulged that?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I'm sick of everyone armchair saying that they know more than the doctors.
It needs to be hard for people to remain unvaccinated. Right now, it's kind of the opposite. It's fine. I mean, it's easy if you're unvaccinated. You can do everything you want to do anyway.
If you ask them, what is the most corrupt industry that's corrupted our political system, they'll all say the same thing. The oil industry is huge, the pesticide industry, but they'll say nobody has the influence that the pharmaceutical industry has. There are more pharmaceutical lobbyists on Capitol Hill than there are congressmen, senators, and Supreme Court justices combined. And they put twice the money of the next biggest lobbyist, which is oil and gas. They're notoriously corrupt. The 4 companies that make all 72 of the vaccines that are now mandated for our children, every one of them is a convicted felon.
You're not going to know that the police officers, and we're going to see if somebody is going to look to harm.
But at some point, these mandates by workplaces, by schools, I think it will be important to say, hey, you can opt out, but if you want to opt out, you have to sign these forms, you have to get twice weekly testing.
In the last 10 years, those 4 companies, Sanofi, Merck, Pfizer, and Glaxo, have paid $35 billion in penalties and damages and civil penalties for falsifying science, for defrauding regulators, for lying to doctors and manipulating and bribing and blackmailing, etc., and for killing hundreds of thousands of people. Vioxx alone, which is Merck's product, Merck is the biggest vaccine maker in our country. It had another flagship product. Now it's the Gardasil vaccine, but back then it was Vioxx.
And we're going to see if somebody is going to look to harm.
Thank you. More ignoramus behavior and racist anti-Asian rants in Manhattan.
You're not from here. You're from China, aren't you? Go back to China, is what she said.
She opens the window thinking that the cab driver is going to go. And then she yells out, go back to communist China. Again, right. For everyone to hear. Say that racist again. He's like, communist China?
Well, isn't that where you're from?
Wow. New York cops now trying to identify.
Say that racist again. He's like, communist China?
Well, isn't that where you're from?
Wow. Maria telling our Sefan Kin that she got her husband then, and who recorded his interaction with the woman, you just saw it, as she got into a cab, as we first reported here on Eyewitness News. Ignoramus behavior. The NYPD says there have been 10 anti-Asian hate crimes reported in the first 2.5 months of this year, not including this one, compared to 29 during all of last year.
That's ridiculous. Well,
the man charged is being held as a reason for his release. He'll likely be under electronic monitoring and confined to his home.
one company.
And that's all they say about it. Wow.
After the pandemic.
You're not going to know that the police officers, and we're going to see if somebody is going to look to harm somebody through hate.
Say that racist again. He's like, communist China?
Well, isn't that where you're from?
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sick of everyone armchair saying that they know more than the doctors.
All right, so I have a special guest with me today, and we just want to thank you for using your platform and your voice for elevating the important issue of young people getting vaccinated. She's here today to meet with the president and Dr. Fauci later this afternoon, but she agreed to come say a quick hello to all of you first. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Olivia.
You're not going to know that the police officers, and we're going to see if somebody is going to look to harm.
If the police could recognize that, look, black people call the police more than any other group. So that means that they are not the police work for us. We don't work for them.
Teens on East 86th Street. A firefighter suffered a concussion and broken teeth. Police are still looking for the other 5 kids.
They are public servants to protect and serve. Servant.
beating of a passenger on an MTA bus in the Bronx, and now New York cops hoping someone recognizes the thugs who did this.
And growing up as a woman of color, as a little girl of color, I know how important representation is. I know how you want to see someone who looks like you in certain positions.
If he were too brown, that would be a problem. Are you saying that?
I wasn't able to follow up with why. If that's the assumption you're making, I think that feels like a pretty safe one. But it wasn't until Harry and I were together that we started to travel through the Commonwealth. I would say 60-70% of which is people of color, right? Look, the Commonwealth is a huge part of the monarchy. Concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
Please. Nobody said that.
I went to the institution and I said that I needed to go somewhere to get help. I said that I've never felt this way before and I need to go somewhere. And I was told that I couldn't, that it wouldn't be good for the institution.
One way or another, we get to choose.
The maskless passenger purposefully coughing on the driver before grabbing his phone and ripping off his mask.
You don't touch my property.
To sex trafficking victims.
We have to support the sex workers.
Moderna is now looking at the effectiveness of its COVID.
The bustle of the countless bars here open late at night on the Lower East Side.
Video. You already know. Majesty the Rebel. Put the camera on me. What's up? What's up? What's up? Don't what's up? Get off. What's up? Get off. What's up?
Oh my God.
The 50-year-old man sitting near the front of the bus repeatedly pummeled. The attack after a dispute that began when the suspects boarded the bus and one of them bumped into the victim.
Else. I was living here before you got here.
Oh my God, this is not
You heard me? Did you heard me? Trust Yvonne. My name is Yvonne. I've been living in this bitch before you got here. You disrespectful ass.
What are you doing? Going up? I'm getting in.
just like last time we last saw each other. When I was trying to distance and you fucking bawled me out when we've never had.
First of all, don't curse at me. Don't even talk to me, you white trashy bitch. How about that, you fucking white trash? You fucking white trashy bitch. That's what the fuck you are. Here we go again. You think you're the only one that got a phone for all of that? Take your phone and go fuck yourself with it. That's what you do, okay? How about that, you fucking white trash? You fucking white trashy bitch. That's what the fuck you are. Take your phone and go fuck yourself with it. That's what you do, okay?
Basically, we need to make getting vaccinated the easy choice. That is what it's going to take for us to actually end the pandemic.
Police say the attack happened back on June 30th in East New York. They say the thieves beat the 41-year-old man with a pan, stole his cell phone, and ran. Police say the victim suffered a fractured spine and was cut about the face during that attack.
Overnight, police arrested 19-year-old King Wright, charging him with assault and harassment. Police say that on May 1st, he attacked Charles McLennan from behind in broad daylight and repeatedly hit him until he lost consciousness.
does not want them to serve jail time.
To the white woman.
Mia Ponsetto approached 14-year-old Keon Harold Jr.
On CBS this morning, Gail talks to the white woman, black teenager, to the white woman now arrested.
Pretty much ends the violence at that moment. But look at just how disgusting this is to watch. The looting has got...
Including whether the killings were a hate crime. Today, the Reverend Al Sharpton and candidates for New York City mayor pleaded for an end to the violence targeting Asian Americans.
You will never see me fly an American flag, let's be clear.
And we're going to see if somebody is going to look to harm.
All people giving coronavirus vaccines should insert the needle into the deltoid muscle, aspirate first to make sure there is no inadvertent intravascular administration, and then, providing no blood comes into the syringe, squirt it in.
It's a little shot, it takes 2 seconds.
You know, we're talking about sort of 1 in 85,000 here. It's a really rare thing. And yet this could potentially be eradicated. Now, this paper needs peer reviewed, of course, but it's a variable to eliminate. As I understand it, and I've been given intramuscular injections since I was 18 years old, there's no complications associated with aspirating. And we saw that, I showed you the video of Chinese nurses, that they all just gave a quick tug back before they injected. Why on earth not? And that variable would be gone. Then if we found out that the prevalence of this thrombocytopenia side effect was exactly the same a few months after everyone had changed the vaccine techniques, and that means I'm wrong. But no harm would have been done. You know, it's always risk-benefit analysis.
Hi, everyone. All right.
I think that everybody should go and get the shot. It doesn't hurt.
So I have a special guest with me today.
I think that everybody should go and get the shot. It's a little shot, it takes 2 seconds. It doesn't hurt.
Joining us in the briefing room is actress and multi-platinum recording singer-songwriter.
I think that everybody should go and get the shot. It's a little shot, it takes 2 seconds. It doesn't hurt. I think that everybody should go and get the shot. It's a little shot, it takes 2 seconds. It doesn't hurt.
And all of these other Silicon Valley corporations who are now in this conspiracy to make sure that we cannot talk about our grievances. We cannot say bad things about pharmaceutical products. We cannot question government policies that make no sense to us. Number one, I am not a conspiracy theorist. I follow the facts. I don't know that the COVID illness was laboratory generated in Wuhan. There is plenty of evidence that it was, but not enough evidence for me to say that it's a fact. My question is, why don't we know the answer to that? Why is Tony Fauci not being asked that question? Why is President Trump not launching an investigation, or President Xi or the presidents of any of these countries saying, where did this come from? Because we need to know that. The global citizens, this is the worst calamity in history. And nobody seems curious about where this actually comes from. We know it didn't come from a bat in the wet market in Wuhan. And that story was a fable that it now has no basis, in fact. And we have Nobel laureates, and we have large institutions and investigative agencies and prosecutorial agencies are saying, we think it came from the Wuhan lab, and we think that it may have come from studies that were funded by Bill Gates
and Tony Fauci. I don't know if this is true. Why are our government officials not asking that as the number one question? Why, instead of sending their police to suppress dissent, are they not sending the police to question people who may know the answer to that question? There are many other questions that I'd like to know the answer.
You're not going to know that the police officers, and we're going to see if somebody is going to look to harm somebody through hate.
We want leadership, but we don't want bullying. And we know the difference. We want to know, why are we spending $18 billion on vaccines and only $1.4 billion on therapeutic drugs?
Okay. Thank you, Olivia, so much for joining us. Good luck with your great day.
You're still a traitor.
And we're going to see if somebody is going to look to harm. And we're going to see if somebody is going to look to harm.
You know, let's do things that are safe, if it's safe to do things that are safe. Now, what's going to happen now is Dr. Fauci is going to ignore this, Chris Witt is going to ignore this, Patrick Vallance is going to ignore this, and nothing's going to change. Nadeem Sahari won't even watch the video. So nothing's going to change, and it's going to carry on the way it is. That's what's going to happen, unfortunately. Unless you can think of something to stimulate the politicians to issue a directive.
If the police could recognize that, look, black people call the police more than any other group. So that means that they are not they don't have an antithesis toward the police, an antipathy for the police. They simply want to be treated fairly and justly and decently when the police arrive. The police work for us. We don't work for them. They are public servants to protect and serve. So when we get that on the table...
The challenges facing the United States in human rights are deep-seated. They did not just emerge over the past 4 years, such as Black Lives Matter. It did not come up only recently.
At one point, most of the new emojis are dedicated to different skin tones. For the couple with the heart emoji and the kiss emoji, those updates could hit your phone as early as January. They said they're working on skin tones to reflect interracial couples. They haven't done that before, so I think that's a really great idea. You may not.
A time where I thought you could talk to people. There was a time where I thought you could talk to people and you could rally and march and hold hands and everything would be all right.
And stabbed the girl once in the chest before running away with a group of people. The girl was rushed to a nearby hospital.
So Hong, I mean, we're unable to show that video at this time that I know you're speaking of.
The thing is, she already showed it a half an hour before, for whatever reason, and then somebody chimed in and said, no, it's a black man. It kind of spoils the Sharpton thing.
Now my white friends are finally seeing it for themselves, on video.
Is about being the victim of an anti-Asian hate incident, but then says they didn't act until her video went viral. She joins me later. But then give me an idea of, I mean, how you were feeling, you know, when you reached out for help from the police, and you just explained what was said to you, and how this was further humiliating, you know, for you, and how this made you feel in terms of your level of vulnerability and security, I mean, from this point forward even.
The Asian American community should not have to stand alone.
To stand united against hate.
The fear that is keeping our own Asian American community from going to work, going grocery shopping, sending our kids to school, and now most importantly, getting vaccinated.
I want to play some of the sound from Secretary Blinken and his Chinese counterpart who spoke in Mandarin, so what you're going to hear is the voice of an interpreter.
We'll also discuss our deep concerns with actions by China.
You will never see me fly an American flag, let's be clear.
Including in Xinjiang, Hong Kong, Taiwan, cyber attacks on the United States, economic coercion toward our allies.
Challenges facing the United States in human rights are deep-seated. They did not just emerge over the past 4 years, such as Black Lives Matter. It did not come up only recently.
I want to remind anyone who feels that they have witnessed or experienced any act of hate.
Sources telling Eyewitness News the baby was found with 2 fractures to her skull.
Go to nyc.gov/stopasianhate.
And new information this morning on a random attack on a 71-year-old grandfather in the Bronx.
We have a pandemic for those who haven't gotten a vaccination.
After World War II, because the Nazis were doing that. They were testing vaccines on people and all these other medical treatments. And the vaccine court has paid out $4 billion.
Okay. Thank you, Olivia, so much for joining us. Good luck with your great day.